Our guest today is Rabbi Hannah Dresner. She is spiritual leader of Or Shalom Synagogue on Vancouver's east side. She believes it is her calling to work toward a Judaism of head, heart, and physical being, so that our religious lives address the breadth of our human needs. Rabbi Hannah comes to the rabbinate with hospital-based clinical pastoral education at the University of California at San Francisco. In that capacity and in her communal work, she has accompanied transitions to death, both peaceful and not, ends of well-lived lives and tragic truncations of life. Ordained as spiritual director in 2012 and rabbi in 2014, in 2017, Rabbi Hannah was named an adjudicator of Jewish law by the Aleph Alliance for Jewish Renewal. She is a Rabbis Without Borders Fellow and participates in Institute for Jewish Spirituality's Clergy Leadership Program, a fellowship in mindfulness. Rabbi Hannah blogs on the My Jewish Learning website. Her writing is archived there as well at orshalom.ca. Welcome, Rabbi Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time from your clearly very busy life to be here with us today in the studio.
It's a delight.
Thank you. And I had forgotten to say that this is the last show of our series, which was started by Tom Eskin back in January, where we meet leaders of different religious paths to ask what their path towards death is and how they serve the community and how we can all learn. So it's a great joy to have you here today. And also, I would like to say that Tom Eskin has now moved to Nanaimo and will no longer be on the show. So I've been honored to take this last program with him, for him. And Rabbi Hannah, is it good if I call you Rabbi Hannah? Is that
absolutely.
Thank you. And I would like to begin with a really specific and general question for our listeners. Could you describe the core of what Judaism teaches about life and death?
Well, every morning, Jews open to the new day expressing gratitude for the gift of being alive. Sleep is considered a rehearsal for death, called the little death. And even every exhalation and inhalation is considered a miracle. The breath leaving the body, maybe not to return. Judaism thinks of creation not as a series of events at the beginning of time, but as an ongoing divine act. If the flow were to cease, we'd blink out of existence. So every morning we pray, "My God, the soul you've given me is fresh this morning. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me. You keep me breathing, but there will come a time when you'll take it away from me. For each breath still in me, I thank you. Thank you for returning my soul to me upon waking. For each breath, in each breath, you give me life anew." The liturgy expresses gratitude for the gift of our ephemeral bodies, united with a soul at the moment of birth, and for the purpose of enacting our particular soul's work in the world. Essentially, Judaism teaches that our awareness of the eventuality of death is what motivates us to live fully. The great 20th century Jewish theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel said that eternity is not perpetual future, but perpetual present, and that the hereafter is not only a world to come, but a world here now. Judaism emphasizes life and a building of heaven on earth. If we're wise enough to come to understand that we really are here to serve, then what we acquire in life is just in order to give it away. And at the end of life, to give back in reciprocity for the gift of life. Death is a homecoming. And the very first words that Jews say upon hearing of a death are, Adonai Natan ve'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God gave and God has taken. May the name of the Holy One be blessed.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. And you brought some music also here to play at this time from the 23rd Psalm. Could you introduce that for us?
Yes. I thought that taking something from the 23rd Psalm would be appropriate here because of this sense of that Judaism has, that there isn't a reason to be afraid of death. That if we've lived as we should, it's simply a natural ending and the time to sort of give the gift of life back to the one who gave it to us. And so this little piece from the 23rd Psalm explores the line, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I am not afraid.
We'll hear that now. Thank you so much.
גם כי אלך בגיא צר מוות לא אירא רע כי אתה עמדי גם כי אלך בגיא צר מוות לא אירא רע כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומי ישנתך המה 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 ינחמוני שבטך ומי ישנתך המה 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 ינחמוני גם כי אלך בגיא צר מוות לא אירא רע כי אתה עמדי גם כי אלך בגיא צר מוות לא אירא רע כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומי ישנתך המה 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 ינחמוני שבטך ומי ישנתך המה 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 ינחמוני.
We've been listening to the extraordinary Gam Ki Elech from the 23rd Psalm. And if you're just tuning in now, this is the Death Matters live show on Vancouver Co-op 100.5 FM. My name is Abigail, and I'm in the studio today with our special guest, Rabbi Hannah Dresner. Hannah, could you speak a little bit more about that piece? I must apologize. Just before we played, we had one of those radio moments where things just didn't line up, and I was trying to find the number. But so, could you introduce it now?
Yes, I would be happy to.
Thank you.
It's a line from the 23rd Psalm. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I am not afraid, for you are with me. And it was composed by a lay cantor who's actually a physician in New York. His name is Ellie Kranzler. And I thought I'd given you him singing it, but actually that was me singing it.
Oh, really? Oh, that was
Yeah.
so beautiful. Wonderful. So So, dear listeners, we're here speaking about the practices of preparing for death and after death in the Judaic tradition. And so, Hannah, let's continue on that. Could you talk a little bit about the rituals that happen near the time of death?
Certainly, yeah. Before death, in those moments before death, a Jew is offered an opportunity to create a living will and to confess. And the main biblical source for this is Jacob's request of God near death, Lord of the world, please grant that a man should fall ill a few days before his death in order that he have time to put his house in order and repent of his sins. And Genesis continues to say, so it happened that Jacob fell ill a little while before his death and gathered his children to him and blessed them. In the final moments of life, a rabbi might help the dying to offer last words of wisdom to closest kin. Jews confess on their deathbeds, asking that they be forgiven by their spouses and their loved ones and friends, and in the eyes of God for all sins in life. The dying person also acknowledges that they forgive others for any wrong done to them during this lifetime, so that there is a clear slate and everything is aligned for an easy transition. We seek, I guess, an unconflicted leave-taking of the soul from the disintegrating body and a swift, peaceful ascent of the soul. On his or her deathbed, the final words of a Jew are Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel, Adonai, our God, is the unity of all that is. And perhaps this is the one Jewish declaration of faith, belief that all is connected, all is part of a great and vast whole. Each man and woman connected to her fellow, human beings connected to other animal species, inanimate and animate creation, all of a piece. And in the moment of death, earth connected to heaven by the soul that traverses that boundary as it leaves the body and goes home. One sacred myth teaches that when souls return to heaven, they assemble before the throne of glory. And God asks, what did you learn from human beings on earth? And in this way, God discovers how her work has been enacted in the world and how human beings have filtered her aspirations for the world through their humanness to make God's commandments come alive with color and texture and joy.
Extraordinary, isn't it? I just love that question that is asked by God. What have you learned from human beings?
It's gives a wonderful sense of the reciprocity that's, I think, at the heart of Jewish notions of life and death.
Yes, and also this aspect of co-creativity.
Yes.
That is such a profound thought, and
right.
It's often the piece when we interview many people on this show from many different walks of life, professions, ideologies, practices, and that in a way is the key piece, I think, that links everybody. Even if someone says that they don't have any practice, you say, well, what about this aspect of creating what you create and someone creating you and beyond that, and giving thanks beyond to the ancestors and all the ancestors in many forms, as you've mentioned here. So it's pretty profound. And I also love the way you've given God a feminine pronoun.
Well, I particularly love the new pronoun they.
Yes.
And we can get past it all.
No, it's so important. So important. And is this this aspect of God's being central to your form of practice? Because
which aspect?
Well, it seems to me, and I've been to Or Shalom Synagogue for Bar Mitzvah and for some other things which are lovely, some storytelling, and it seems to me that you're not, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not like a traditional or Orthodox Jew. You're what's called a progressive, or there's other language for it, I think.
Or Shalom is a renewal congregation.
Renewal. Mm-hmm.
And the idea of Jewish renewal is simply to renew the vigor of Judaism in our present time. Mm-hmm. It has a traditional flavor, but it is very, I would say, progressive or left-wing in its notions of what it means to bring Judaism alive and to really think about the core values, not to let go of the form entirely, but to really bring our practices to a place where we are authentic in responding to the commandments, shall we say, in ways that we're sincerely able.
And maybe responding to the demands of this time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So maybe what you were getting to is this idea that God very much desires human participation, and so God is learning from us. When we return home, God wants to know, so how did you bring my works into the world? In what manner did you manifest them? How in the 21st century is that done?
Oh yes, that's wonderful. And of course, the whole the richness of Jewish folklore going way back, and stories that have been told through time, beginning about rabbis and their teaching stories, have shed light on that, I think. I mean, I know many of the stories from Helm, and it's just beautiful, those stories of God speaking to human beings in a real way, not as in the Old Testament way, but in a now you're an adult and what are you doing in the world way. Yeah, beautiful. Oh, I wonder if let's go ahead, because this is such a rich conversation. And could you talk a little bit more about the person who is about to pass on their deathbed, the idea of the vigil that happens then, and what happens right after?
Well, I think we've talked a little bit about the vigil, the idea that someone should be accompanied at the deathbed. But once a person dies, there are two sequential foci in Judaism. First, our honoring of the body of the deceased. And then, once the body is interred, support for the mourner.
And I know green burial is very typical of the Jewish tradition with how the body is handled.
Yes, green burial. We have been burying green from the beginning of time. But to trace that process, a corpse is not left alone, really, for even a minute. There is a lay society called the Chevra Kadisha, the Holy Fellowship, that takes the body and solemnly prepares the body for burial, washing the body ritually, and dressing the body in shrouds while reciting psalms. And the shrouds and the coffin are uniform because we really believe in returning to a kind of a sense of every man, an equality in death that we may not have acted out in life. Opting for the simplest and greenest alternatives. Linen shrouds, a plain pine box, or a willow basket, or even a cloth sack or a prayer shawl, so that there's no barrier to quick, unmediated return of our bodies to the clay from which we were formed. Dust to dust. Yes, indeed, and that's quite a teaching practice for many who are now waking up to the idea of green burial that has been done for so long in such a revered way. And there's a sense of timing after the death, isn't there? I remember hearing when Leonard Cohen passed away, that it took very short time for him to be
his family had prepared well, of course. So he was flown very quickly from his home, I think in Los Angeles, to Montreal, and then driven to the
Yes, there is a sense of immediacy about really allowing the soul to go free and to take care of the body with dignity and immediacy. And it's really thought to be the highest ranked amongst all of the good deeds outlined, by Judaism for living a righteous life, to take on these opportunities to offer kindness to one who can no longer thank us. And that includes the requirements to eulogize someone publicly and to bury them immediately. And and once the person is buried, then the emphasis shifts from honoring the dead to caring for the mourner. And the physical labor of burial is considered to be greatly healing.
Yes.
A great honor and greatly healing. So Jews are encouraged to fill the grave themselves, handing the shovel off from one family member to another, to members of the community, until the grave is completely full, because it's a way of really putting a person to rest. And we believe strongly in the efficacy and the transformational quality of action and ritual. So actually doing it yourself, not leaving it to employees of the cemetery.
I was once at a Jewish cemetery with a dear friend who had passed, and I was surprised by the intensity of that willful action at the graveside, and
it's very beautiful.
It was really impactful. And her husband, who had the shovel first in, was just so intent with the taking up the earth and pounding it in, and it was it's quite an awakening moment to be there. You really feel the shock and the
rawness.
The rawness. Yeah. It was a powerful, I thought this is a powerful mourning ritual.
And it's, I think that ideally it's done in silence, so that there's real solemnity to it, and all you hear is that thud, on the box. And then once the grave is fully filled, the mourners recite the Kaddish, magnifying and sanctifying God's name right there at the grave in the moment of the most acute and, as we've said, raw moment of mourning. Then all of a sudden, the only spoken words really by the mourner are to praise God.
Yes, the sacred
kind
words.
Of clearing a path, for the ascent of the soul. I have a friend who calls it the Zamboni.
Bring in the Zamboni. Yeah.
And then once the Kaddish is said, the community forms two sort of lines for the mourners to walk through. And the mourners are greeted by wave after wave of consolation. Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch sha'arav leitzion v'Yerushalayim. Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch sha'arav leitzion v'Yerushalayim. Each individual in those two lines offering the blessing, may you be comforted, may you be comforted, may you be comforted, as the mourners pass them by on their way to the exit of the cemetery.
Quite a meditative practice there.
Beautiful.
Yes. Let's hear the Kaddish now. And do you say it Kaddish?
I do want to say something about this one. The last piece you played was, I just sang it very simply. This is a whole orchestration by a fantastic rabbi, Andy Hahn, who's known as the Kirtan Rabbi. And he takes just one line of the Kaddish. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach, may the name of the Great One be blessed, and turns it into a kirtan. So you'll hear call and response. It's a very powerful piece.
Sounds very rich. Thank you, Carrie. So we'll be hearing the kirtan now.
כל
We've been listening to a beautiful Kaddish. It's different than the traditional Kaddish, and I'm going to ask our guest, Rabbi Hannah from the Or Shalom Synagogue, to tell us a little bit about this.
Well, the mourner's Kaddish is traditionally recited by a Jew for their parents for 11 months after death. The first time at the grave, as we've said, once the grave has been filled. And there's sort of two mitzvot, which is a Hebrew word for opportunities for goodness, shall we say, in this ritual. One is the opportunity for a child to continue to pay respect for their parents for the year after death. But the other is that the Kaddish is recited in community. It's not recited on a personal level. It's only recited in community. And so the other half of the deed is for the community to bear witness. Bear witness to the person's mourning and to the person's praise of the Creator for having given this life in the first place. Andy Hahn's Kaddish is a kirtan, and he just takes one line from a very long prayer and just uses it rhythmically, repeatedly. The tune is traditional, but he mixes it up quite a bit and involves the community, so that the community isn't just bearing witness, but really being pulled in to the sense of hallowing God's name in this moment of loss.
So would this Kaddish perhaps be enjoyed by a circle gathering after a death? Or at home, would someone sit and listen to it themselves to have that sense of community?
Yes. If you'd like, I can talk a little bit about how the mourning proceeds. Yeah.
Yes, please.
So, for the first full year, an individual would say Kaddish, and for their parents, a shorter amount of time for, let's say, a sibling or a child. And then there would be a repetition of the Kaddish on an annual basis on the anniversary of the person's death, but only, let's say, once a year thereafter. And what's really beautiful, I think, in the tradition is that visiting the sick or attending to a person in mourning isn't just the pastoral role of the rabbi, but is incumbent upon every member of the community. And at Or Shalom, we have a system that includes a coordinator of care for any person who's in need, and congregants who've signed on to offer assistance ranging from, dog walking to food prep to tech support to body work. And care for mourners traditionally includes attention to the mourner's home environment, setting out a basin of water for ritual cleansing when the family comes back from the burial, or covering mirrors in the house so that the mourners can remain in an internal state and not be stimulated by their own reflection to be thinking about what they look like, but rather to really just be with themselves. Community members set out low stools so the mourners can enact the lowly condition of their hearts, and the community prepares a first meal for the mourners that's made up of whole round foods like lentils or eggs that symbolize wholeness, life, and maybe even sort of return to productive life, their ultimate return to productive life. The community members ensure that the mourners are joined in their homes for communal prayer 3 times a day for 7 days, so that they can say the Kaddish in an intense fashion embraced by community. And then at the end of that week, the community comes and raises the mourner up from the stool, literally takes the mourner by the hand and raises them up and takes him or her for a walk around the block.
Oh, my
goodness. As a tiny step towards return to the world. Oh. And, it's beautiful. At Or Shalom, we also provide a listener for the full year of mourning, someone just to have tea with and just talk. And that person kind of represents the community at large, companioning the grief process after that intense period where everyone's around. And, when people kind of go back to their own lives and you feel, wait a minute, I'm still
alone.
Still spinning.
My goodness, what a beautiful practice that is. It seems like so much of it is created to comfort the bereaved, but also protect them, and to take care with their first steps out, their first. And I'm wondering, is there sort of a fasting going on there as well from media and other forms of stimulation?
Yes, there is. I don't want to say fasting because it's not meant to be, ascetic, but rather. More of a protection from the world, from the requirements of the world. So you're not supposed to go to work for 7 days or really leave your house. You're not required to be a host to the people that are coming to your home.
Yeah.
You are just in whatever state you're in. And it's incumbent upon the community to be aware of you and to only speak when spoken to really kind of leave a person alone in their grief and companion them as much as they want. And then there is a kind of a slow return to the world after the 7 days where the community comes to pray in the person's home. Then there's a 30-day period where a man might not shave their beard. Then there's another sort of commemoration at the end of that period. And then finally a longer period of the whole 11 months in which some people don't go to parties, don't go to concerts, don't buy new clothing. So it's not a food fast, but a fast from frivolity and perhaps, real external manifestations of joy.
It sounds like it's created to support the mourner, just to become more conscious of every aspect of life and where they are in the whole circle of life.
Absolutely. And I will say also that there are traditions that these periods of mourning correspond to the ascent of the soul. So that while I mentioned before that there's sort of two foci, and while the mourner is lessening their mourning practice over a long period of time, the soul is released and rising and making its home in whatever
its journey through the
region.
Yes, that's right. And it's very interesting you say that, because in another tradition, for instance, they hold onto the body for a few days with the vigil, believing that the soul is slowly departing the 3 days, for instance. That's quite Irish. But in Judaism, the body is gone because it's no longer use, but the soul is still considered to be enlivened and moving through its...
The soul may take its time. It depends. I think it depends on... I don't know if you've felt this, but I definitely felt the moment my father's soul left, the house. Some people can feel that. And some people, find that their loved one is lingering.
So
has unfinished business.
With the body. Yeah.
I think there's a desire to finish business, to help the person before they die, to close the books, to be satisfied that they did their best, that they are forgiven for their misdeeds, that they let go of their angers, so that there's not a pull to remain.
That's right.
There is a desire to help the soul
for the ease of transforming. Yes, very beautiful. And I know, Patricia, you had a question about the preparing of the body after death.
I just also want to say, as I listen to you explain this ritual, it seems like such an ongoing invitation to reverence that we don't get to explore or get to experience in our lives. It's so deep. So I'm just wondering if what the process was with washing the body. Who would do that?
That is done by a lay society called the Chaver Kadisha, the Holy Fellowship. And there is one for men, one for women. And they are entrusted to take the body and to watch over it, although family members do and friends do participate in watching over the body. In other words, between the time that a person dies and the time that they're buried, there might be 24, 48, or maybe 36 hours, although we try to do it quickly, and someone is sitting with the body the whole time. Then the society takes the body and takes off whatever clothing the person died in, hospital garb or whatever it is, and even removes some, maybe there's some tubes, or removes what they can, and washes the body while reciting psalms, and then dresses the body in linen shrouds and puts the body in the casket or the basket or whatever green receptacle the body's going to be put in for burial. And then the vigil continues to accompany the body until burial.
And it's interesting, I think Patricia and I both find that there's a group that carries this task. It's really a holy task of washing and sometimes anointing the body. And there's a reason why the family doesn't do it. Do you feel, is it felt that it might be too much for them? Or do sometimes they participate or just never participate?
The family does not participate. I'm not sure I can say why, but that makes sense that it would be
a group that's really dedicated to that work.
Actually, the tradition is that the family doesn't see the body, doesn't see the person once they die. They might see them at the moment of death, but there's no viewing of the body. So there is a desire to remember the person as they were in life.
Yeah, full of life.
And those who participate in the preparation, the tradition is not to really talk about it, to just do it as a kind of a humble act of community kindness and keep it to yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. I really love the idea of having a listener for a year too. Somebody who just says, I'm for this family in whatever way is asked for. I'm present, I'm available. Right.
Yeah, that's a very special aspect of the Or Shalom community, which is just a very deep spiritual community.
Yes, and it's quite a strong practice. We're going to be finishing up very soon, Hannah, and thank you so much for coming in. Is there anything else we should be talking about? Any other final words?
I brought some wonderful quotes that I think I'll end with.
Oh, good.
The wife of a famous 18th century rabbi, Simcha Bunim of Pshischa, Poland, wept at her husband's deathbed. But before the rabbi comforted her, saying, "My dear, don't cry, because my whole life was simply that I might learn how to die." And the other quote I would bring is from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who is a great Jewish theologian of the 20th century and wrote very beautifully on the meaning of death and the meaning of life in the context of our awareness that we're going to die. And he said, "The greatest wisdom man can attain is to know that we have to conquer in order to succumb. We have to acquire in order to give away. We have to triumph in order to be overwhelmed. The aspiration is to obtain. The perfection is to dispense. This is the meaning of death. It's the act of giving away in reciprocity on man's part for God's gift of life. For the pious man, it's a privilege to die."
That's quite a powerful consideration. Thank you for being with us today, Rabbi Hannah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Let's go out on a third piece of music you've brought in for us.
The third piece of music is called May the Angels Carry You, and it's a contemporary version of the Vidui, which is the deathbed prayer of confession. And this was composed by Rabbi Gila Razel Raphael.
Thank you.
Welcome back. You're listening to Death Matters Live and on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM, or streaming live at coopradio.org. And we'd like to thank our sponsors as we're coming to the end of our show with dyingmatterscanada.com, memorialsocietybc.org, and lifethreads.ca.
So, thank you for being here again. Rabbi Hannah, thank you for being here. Patricia, thank you. And as we say goodbye, may you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you when we do, and blessings.
Shalom.
Shalom, and go well, and pole, pole. Be kind and be well. Take care of each other. Goodbye. This is Abigail Fisher-Lang saying goodbye for now.
Take care.